All right, in this video, we're going to show you how to tie a bucktail jig, and it's just really awesome catching a fish on a lure that you tied, and best of all, it's not that difficult to do. So here's really a jig, and this is exactly what we're going to be tying. I tied this previously. This is just an actual DOA. This jig head is made by DOA. It's what I use for soft plastics, but I just use it for these jig heads as well. It's got a really strong and sharp hook on there, and I like the cool looking eye. But all this is really, I use feathers. This gives a little bit better action than just the normal, just straight bucktail only. And in this one, I don't have the flash, like the kind of the crystal flash. In this video, I'll teach you how to use the crystal flash as well. I'll just kind of deck it out. So the things you need, more importantly, is let's just go over the items that you have to have. First of all, of course, you have to have bucktail, have to have some scissors to cut with, need to have a jig head, of course. And this one's going to be, I'm going to be tying a bigger one. This was a really small jig head. This one's a 3/8 ounce. This is for a little bit deeper water. Other thing you have to have is some sort of yarn. In this case, I'm actually using just old Power Pro. This is the very end of a spool. It's not nearly enough to spool a reel with. And instead of just throwing it away, we're just going to use it to tie some jigs. And they're going to be extremely strong because this stuff packs a punch. It's just 10-pound braid. And then last but not least, just some white fingernail polish. This is nothing fancy here, just simple fingernail polish you can buy anywhere. Okay, so here are the extras. Here are the nice to haves, I would call it. First is a vise. Really good to have this, just makes it a whole lot easier to tie. For a while, I didn't have a vise or a bobbin, and it is possible. I mean, you can tie them and have them be effective, but with these two tools, it's just much easier. Also is to have, the feathers. It's not a requirement. But I do believe that having those two feathers tailing at the very end gives it some much needed extra action. So highly recommend these. These are, I believe it's hen hackle. And I just use just pure white. Also, I mentioned before, we're gonna add some flash to this one. So I like this Flashaboo. This is it's really thin. It has great action in the water and gives off a ton of flash. All right, so what I'll do now is I'm gonna set all this up and I'm gonna bring the camera just right here next to me while I tie it so you can see exactly what I'm doing and I'll explain why throughout. So we're gonna go ahead and stop this now and we're gonna pick up with everything set. All right, so we now have the jig head in the vise. Again, this is just the nice thing to have one of these vices. They're not that expensive, but it'll just hold everything just in one spot. You don't have to worry about it. So what I'm gonna do, first step is to attach the braid to the actual jig head. And there's multiple ways to do this. You can just start wrapping and wrapping. Since this jig head does have these two little points, I'm actually going to I tied a loop knot in the braid, and I'm just going to just use one of these points as an anchor. That way I know there's no way that this thing is going to move. So I'll just go ahead and get it on there, and I want to just start wrapping. I need to make this head area a little bit thicker. It needs to end up being about flush with this top. So we're just going to go ahead and just anchor that line on there. Again, just doing wraps going forwards and backwards just to cover that entire area. And so now we're going to move back towards this back section, because on these jigs, just like flies, you need to start with the area, like the hook side first, and move up towards the head. So what we're going to do first is we're going to attach the actual feathers. So let me go ahead and cut off some of the feathers. All right, so I have the feathers. I've gone ahead and cut them to size. This is about the length that I would like the actual tail to be. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have them where they're both facing the outside. They're facing apart. And of course, when you pull them tight, the feathers need to be the same exact length. So they're at the same length. I have them pinched down. What I'm going to do now is just hold them on here and then just do a couple wraps around. And we need to make sure it's going around that middle section. I'll do 3 wraps around and without pulling it tight, and then I'm just going to go with my fingers, make sure that they're set up correctly. Looks like both of them are trying to go in their own little directions. So again, want to make sure they're going straight, and then I'll actually hold them steady with my fingers, and then we'll do a couple more wraps and just do it tighter, and then just check to make sure that they're straight. So it looks like both of them are getting on there straight. This bottom one could use a little bit of help. Excellent. So they're both all going on straight, and I like to also have the tag end, up above, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some tight wraps, and then I'm going to move this over it and basically wrap over. That's going to make sure that that those feathers don't pull out, because that's really, in my opinion, one of the better parts of this this jig, as far as the action in the water, is having those feathers out there. So we want to make sure that those never pull out. So now that we have a couple good wraps, I'm going to pull that feather down and do the same with the one behind it. So you can see that they're both gone down, and now I'm going to wrap this line over both strands. Again, this will really lock it into place, and we'll go ahead and put a lot of pressure here. Excellent. So that is the final part of the feathers. Next step is to go ahead and get some of that flash boo on there. So I'm going to cut off a couple strands, and we'll get that started. All right, so we have the flash. I always cut it longer than what I think I'll need, so I'm just going to go ahead and size it. I prefer it to be a little bit shorter than the actual feathers. So we'll go ahead and get it shorter. So that's about the right distance. So that's my distance. And instead of having them all the same exact length, what I do is once I get the distance in my finger, I'll just kind of like move my finger. That way, the top strands move with my finger. So now we have strands that are different lengths, as you can see here. So we're going to use that. We're now going to tie that on there. So we're going to start at the same area. We're going to do the base section. We're going to tie the very top side of it. Because one hassle that sometimes comes into play is that these will wrap around and get around the hook. So we want to tie it on the opposite side. So we're going to tie it on the base and then further up. So let's go ahead and do that. So make sure that, again, just double check the size, the overall length. That looks nice. And let's go ahead and start wrapping. So again, I'm just going to put that on there and then do a couple loops. Just get it on there. And here, just to hide that green line, what I'll do is I'm just going to do a wrap with all this nice flashy stuff, and do that. And then we're going to do a wrap over that just to lock it all in there. So we're going to have a lot of flash here in the base. So that looks good. So now this bottom section is done. What we're going to do now is just the final section up top with the actual bucktail. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim some of this extra stuff off, and then we'll get the bucktail out. All right, so here's the bucktail, and what I'm going to be doing is this is going to be one of the longer jigs that I do. So I'm going to pull from the very base here. This is a little bit longer hair, and we don't have to do all of it in one. So what I typically do is smaller sections. So I'll do one section at a time. So we'll go ahead and pull off some. I'm going to cut it far down as I possibly can. And so you can see, we can just see how long it's going to be. So this is going to be, the height of it, and so this will pull down all the way. This is perfect. So it'll go. Some of the strands go almost the length of the feather, but most of them stop kind of 3/4 the way down. So this is perfect. So I just lost some of the hair. So what I'll do now is just kind of weed out some of the small ones. So go ahead and reset that. To weed out the small ones, what I do is I usually grab it about halfway down, and then just kind of just flutter it down. Just kind of do this right here. This will just knock out all the real small stuff that just is a waste of space. So now we are set. Let's go ahead and again start this. We're going to do the first one on the bottom. All right, we'll do the first one on the actual very top. So we're going to just lay it down at the length. Let me go ahead and just before laying down, it's smart just to go ahead and just chop all these off. There you are. So that way they're the exact same length, and we're just going to put it down right on the base of the head. So do a couple strands softly, and then you can really hunker down on it. There you are. So there's the first round, and so we're just going to continue going around the jig head doing that same exact style. So we got that one. All right, so now for layer 2, or for the side 2, we're just going to go ahead and again match it up to the very top of the jig head. Do a couple soft layers, and then we can start cinching down on it. So again, we just want to make sure that we cover the entire span of the jig head, and also too, I usually just kind of use my fingers just to kind of get them in there and spread them around. And at the very end, we'll just do a final check, but. That looks nice. So again, that covered really this full half. So we'll go ahead and do the next one. All right, so here's the next one. This one's going to be really on the bottom. This is probably the most difficult one to do because you have the hook kind of getting in your way. So what I typically do is just get in there as close as I can, and again the same thing, just do a couple light wraps. So I got a little bit too much on that one, so let me start over. So we're going to start right there, do a light wrap, another light wrap, and then just use my finger to really massage it down. There we are, so that is nice, that one's in there. So now what we can do is start tightening it down. There we are, that'll work. And so but now we're gonna do this last section. All right, we have our bucktail. Let's go ahead and place it in the right spot. I'm gonna place it right there and do again the same exact scenario where we do a couple light wraps. I'm just gonna massage it into place, make sure it looks nice, and then we can start really hunkering down on it. Excellent. So that's so now everything is on there pretty snug. What we're gonna do is just kind of do a final look. Let me make sure all those are going away from that hook. So we'll just kind of do a little loop. So it looks like all areas are covered. Some of them are really kind of spunked out, if you will. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just do a lot of layers over this top part to really just lock in all these loose ends. And also then at the very end, we're gonna do some lighter wraps on this very edge. So let me go ahead and just lock everything in right now. All right, so we have this jig head nice and cinched. You can see these things are not going anywhere. However, when I did get it tight, what this bucktail does is when you tighten it real hard, you can see some of it really just kind of just opens up. So what I'm gonna do is just do a couple light, at the very end, we're gonna just do some light wraps. That way it's not making that bucktail really shoot out. I'm just gonna kind of keep them there and nice and neat and organized and shooting out, back instead of out. So we have that there. They're nice and nice compact. Do a couple more tight rounds at the head, and so now we're done. So what I do is I don't do anything too fancy as far as anchoring it down. I usually just do my finger in the line, do a couple loops, and then take it over the jig head, and you can pull it tight. And that's really it. I mean that'll essentially lock in the braid, and I'll just go ahead and do it twice. Usually I do it one time, but this time I'll just go ahead and play it safe and do it twice. So there we did made some loops in the line, put it over the jig head, and we'll go ahead and pull it tight. So now that is pretty much cinched. We go ahead and just chop off the actual braid. And so the final step now is to go ahead. Let me just cut this one off. Looks like it got damaged. Cut these two off. So the final step is to go ahead and put the fingernail polish, the white fingernail polish, over the braid. That way we have a nice, just clean, just white, red head and then white jig tail. So let's go ahead and do that. All right. So this normal fingernail polish. Let's go ahead and just get a base going on. And again, another nice thing about having one of these vices, you can just spin it along. All right, and some of these hairs that are sticking too far down, what I'm going to do is just purposely get some fingernail polish on them, and just basically push them down here in a second. That way, when they do dry, they'll be essentially forced to stick further straight down. So that's it. That's really the full tie. You can see it's really not that hard. It's just a matter of putting some time in. But when you do catch fish with it, it's just that much more rewarding. So let's go ahead and let me pull this thing out and straighten out these last legs. All right, so here's the final product. This fingernail polish is now mostly dry. Again, it's just a nice, easy to tie jig, and this looks really good in the water, especially with the kind of the multi-layer approach where you have the bucktail fur and these feathers sticking out a little bit further. Highly recommend it. I've caught a ton of snook with the same exact style, and the other one I had is on a smaller jig head, so I wanted to see the difference on tying a little bit larger one. This one will be more for the passes this summer. So if you have any questions on how to tie it or what material I use, just feel free to leave a comment down below. I'll do my best to put links below this as well, so just to help you kind of understand what to use. But Again, the good thing is you can use a lot of the same stuff you have. Like I just basically borrowed some extra Power Pro for yarn, and use this DOA hook. This is the same type of jig head I use for just for normal fishing. So I pulled as much of the normal stuff as possible that I already had. And again, if you do have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, we hope you enjoy the video and can get out on the water soon and catch some big ones.